All right, so we're working on the E30 again after our little break here. And so this is a crankshaft position sensor here, part number 962384. Now this is from an E36 and this one's from an E39. As far as the sensors go, they are different, and they're different because of the connector. But when I got this one in, I checked it, and this sensor is actually shorter than this one, so I'm not sure if it's going to work or not. Now I do have the sensor in, but I don't have any bolts on it. It's hard to see, but it's down there by the starter, right below it. So we have it plugged in, but we don't have the retaining bolt into it, just because that we don't know if it's going to work or not. Basically, what the goal is just to get the max powered on and cranking, and from there we'll check. Now, another thing is that we do have the E36 coolant temperature sensor. It is, again, I know it's dark and it's hard to see, but it's right below the intake manifold there. So you can, that's the coolant temperature sensor there. We switched that over to an E36 style sensor, and that's plugged up. Which are also different as well. And that part number is 211-1122. So that's pretty weird part number there, but it's screwed in. It's the right thread and the connector fit. So the last thing is the cam position sensor. We haven't ordered it. It sits right below the Spanish solenoid here. But the first things first is we've got to figure out the crank situation. So we got to get the crank sensor in. If not, we're gonna have a hell of a time here trying to rectify it while it's in the car. And there's another way of doing it, and that's going to be we're basically going to grab this sensor here, this connector here. This is the connector for the crank sensor, and we can change it to the E39 sensor. But obviously I don't want to do that because this is like a brand new harness. Now changing it up, not a big deal, but again, it's not ideal. The reason, all right, so for now what we're going to do is we're going to wire up the max ECU, and the only thing that we're really concerned about are going to be these two right here coming off the 12-pin connector. So this powers the coils and the ECU, and then we've got one for the actual starter itself. And I'm not sure if that's going to be required or not, but we're going to wire all that up to power for now and then check it. All right, so here's the connectors wired up. This is the ignition / ECU, and this wire is for the starter trigger wire. So we've got that. We're going to go ahead and run this over to the battery for now. I'm going to try to find a connection up front, because I'm pretty sure there's a 12-volt power somewhere up here. I'm not quite sure yet, but I'm pretty sure there is. And we'll go ahead and just hardwire everything for now just to test it. And like I said before, the key is just to make sure that the ECU comes on, one, and then two, we've got crank trigger signal. So go ahead and start wiring this all up. So we got the max powered on. It took a little bit, and there was an issue here, and I wanted to go over it really quick with everybody. So when you look into the technical document, they tell you to look at the connector from the wire side, and so I had it wired up wrong because I was actually looking at it from this side. So they really want you to look at the mating connector. So this is A, and then this is G here, so just for reference there. So we got it powered up and we got it cranking, but unfortunately we have no crank signal. So I pulled up the trigger logger, and on the trigger logger we got absolutely nothing. So that tells me that it's definitely not working there. So we'll have to figure it out and go from there. All right, so we got the new cam sensor here. We're gonna go ahead and get this thing installed. We've got to remove the solenoid off the vanos here and then swap that solenoid out. Okay, so this is the part number that's given to us by Max ECU, and I looked it up that way. As you can see, the sensors are pretty different. There's even a difference in overall length, so the new sensor is longer. I did drop it in to see if it'll fit, but I'm going to put the sensor in and then rotate the motor by hand to make sure nothing strikes. That way we don't have to deal with the same thing we did with the Honda Beat, if you guys remember that one. But so we're gonna check this out, drop it in, and then just see what's if it'll fit or not, or if it'll hit or not. Okay, so we got some engine RPM. I found out that the OBD2 or OBD1 sensors are actually in the front timing cover here. I don't know if you guys can see this. You guys probably won't be able to. I actually had to feel it out by hand, but we did get it in and we got it plugged in, and this is the harness that runs for it to the back now. We went ahead and threw the old crankshaft sensor back in just to plug the hole, and so now we're just going to wait on the camshaft sensor itself, and then we've got to figure out the alternator. So the alternator wiring is a little bit different. This harness is designed for an M50 motor. This is obviously this is an M52, so we've got to figure out what to do about this alternator wiring. So we got the connector here from the old harness, and I'm just not really too sure on how all that stuff works, so I've got to figure that out. But the goal is just to get the car started for now. You guys want to see something fun and scary at the same time? So this is the original fuse wiring here. So in there is like a main relay of some sort and fuel pump relay, I'm assuming. I don't really know. We cut all this out. So these are the fuses. As you can see that the fuses are cut here, so they don't supply power. But you guys want to see something really scary? Watch this. If I ground this, the relays become active. And what's even scarier about this is that the fuel pump comes on. So there's no power here to these fuses, but the relay for some reason still triggers on the fuel pump. All right, so after finding the fuel pump wiring, what we're going to do now is we're starting to remove all the unnecessary stuff. So the thing is that we've actually lost key on power. So I turn the key on and it doesn't do anything. Doesn't seem like ignition is working, starter's not working. But what that means is that we know that it's something to do with the wires that we cut. So not the end of the world, but what we're going to do is to try to help us sort through this mess is that we're going to start removing things we don't need. So for instance, we've got the gauges here. We're not using any of that. There's no reason for that to be there because he's got the aim dash. So I'm going to go ahead and start removing all this stuff just to kind of sort through the things. Now, the real fun thing about this as well is that he's got like this wiring here. I have no idea what it's for. I'm assuming it's for the aim dash because it has the USB cable, but it's all 4 black wires with no labels. Don't know what it's for. So again, like I said, the next step is going to be removing the things that we don't need, and we're going to start off with the gauges right now. Okay, so we got the gauges removed, and what we're trying to isolate really is the wiring that I removed out of the car. There's got to be something that's causing the car not to crank anymore. Obviously I don't know what it is, and I don't know what's causing it not to key on anymore. So that's kind of the next step there, is to go over what we unplugged to try to see if there's anything that we're missing. So with all that removed, there is a ton of wires that are just kind of tucked behind the dash here. And what we're trying to find is just to make sure that we have, you know, what the opposing wires, or what if there's any remaining connectors that we removed. So now it's time to go back to the harness that came out of the car to try to figure out what was what. All right, so we've got our fuel pump wiring kind of worked out here. We've got the ECU on, we've got injectors plugged in. So hopefully we'll see if this thing will start here. Runs like dog shit. It does run. So I've been trying to find the wiring for the link dash. Now the thing is that before I cut out all the wiring, this did in fact power on. So we do know that it works. I just have no idea where the wires are ran to. So I'm gonna go ahead and just work on taking this out completely. And then once I get it out completely, I'm just gonna start chasing the wires. The thing is that there's bundles of wires everywhere, and they're all different colors, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. The gauge cluster wiring, the only other wiring that I cut though is actually in the engine bay. But I tried to power all that, so I tried to hit it with ground and power on the with my power probe, and surprise, surprise, nothing comes on. All right, so really interestingly is that when I have this removed, I found a couple of wood screws that they used to put the gauge plot in, which is, I guess, really interesting. And now we're going to try to remove this panel without breaking it somehow. Okay. So we got the cluster completely removed. Took a little bit of fiddling with. Okay. Look at this. Just wire, exposed wire. Zip electric taped. We got ends that are crimped, and nothing's working. All right. Okay, so I've got my power probe here, and we're just gonna go ground. Okay. So there we go. We got power and ground there. And now we just got to figure out what's what after that. And then that should be good to go. On this side of it, we've got the dash apart here, as you guys saw, and we've got this power and ground situated over here on the aim display. And so now what we've got to do is we're going to feed the CAN bus wires over to the max ECU. Whoever wired it previously used 2 black wires without any labels, so we're going to fix that. And then we also, before we wrap this all back up, I've got to figure out how to get where the speed signal source comes from. On these cars, it comes from the differential, but I need to look at the wiring to see where, if it interfaces anywhere else before wrapping this all up. So we're running into a oddball issue, but not really. On the BMW, you guys may not even be able to see it. But there's a crankshaft sensor that's right above the timing. Like if you're looking at the crank pulley, it's probably about 11 o'clock, but it's right underneath this radiator hose. And the mark for the timing mark is right there as well too. So we can't get, how do we get a timing light on this to sync timing? Well, we went ahead and rotated the motor to top dead center. So the motor right now is on top dead center with the mark on it on the money. And we verified that with an inspection camera. But there's no way that we're gonna be able to time it with an inspection camera. So what you do now is you make a mark. So if you look on the oil pan, you'll see that there's a Sharpie mark here. And I've basically made a little mark on the crank pulley as well. So we're gonna time it using this mark that I made on the crank pulley. And as you can see, I made it all the way up there. That way I know that it's not like a scratch from just being wear and tear. And then we're gonna line it up to the mark, the permanent marker mark that I made. I ideally would rather have some whiteout just to make sure that it's on the money. But unfortunately, I've ran out of whiteout. I'm gonna see if I can grab some on lunch, but that's what we're gonna do. So again, this motor is completely timed, or it's set at top dead center up top rather. and we have this mark that I made on the crank pulley and the mark that I made on the oil pan. And so we're gonna go ahead and time that. And while I'm here, I do want to note that this motor apparently has been sitting for like 5 years or something like that, but it's leaking a ton of oil. So if you look up there, it's just got oil from this spot and from the front timing cover and the oil pan, and it's so bad it's slinging oil all over the place. So I'm gonna have to let the owner know on that it's leaking pretty profusely.